of the word of the Lord. I welcome you this morning on behalf of Pastor Bernard Crawford Jr. and Prophetess Trina Crawford. We ask that you feel welcome. We ask that you have your way. Put your questions in the chat. Those of you out on Facebook land, those of you that are in the temple, we ask that you participate and that you are able to glean what God has for you on this morning. And so we're going to go ahead and get into our education hour, where we will do our scripture. And after the scripture, we are going to do a recap of last week, and then we're going to go into what God has given us for this week. So our scripture is 2 Timothy 3:15 through 17. All scripture is given by the inspiration of God, and it is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness, that the man of God may be perfect, thoroughly furnished unto all good works. Amen. All right, and so we are learning from a book that is called The Seed, and its spiritual elements essential for discipleship. Right. And we are on session 7, which is page 32, if you are following along. And we're just going to do a quick recap on last week. Last week we just really went over what the definitions were. We really learned what budget is, what it means to manage, what's priority. And then our title is Living Within Our Means. And so we really talked about a few things about living within our means, and we really, stayed there on the budget. In our Cultivating the Ground, we were talking about what it means to live within our means and how did we learn to live within our means. And so we went around last week and we had a few members of our congregation share how did they learn that. And I'm going to bring those back to us this week, and we're going to build upon the knowledge that we already have in our house. And so that's what God has really been showing me and growing me in, is how to build on what we already know. We have a lot of knowledge here. We have a lot of educated, well-versed believers who understand the principles of God and what He desires of us. And then He's going to show us how to make these things applicable to our lives. And so last week we went around and asked, how did you learn to live within your means? And so we had Brother Kevin. He said he learned to do it through prayer. And then Sister Tracy, she said that it happened through life circumstances, just really experiencing different things in her life, and she was able to learn from that. Myself, I added to that and just said education. You learn how to do that by being educated. And then Sister Harrison, she said we have to apply the things that we learn. And so on today, that's where we're really going to dig into. And just the rest of the few weeks, we're really going to dig into that whole application. I believe that we're people who pray. I believe that we're people who've experienced things in our lives. I believe we're people who've been educated on the things that we need to do concerning our finances, but have we began to apply them? And so God's really calling me to a place to just share these next few weeks on how life application really works, what it looks like, and just really encouraging us to get to a place where we are where we are applying what we have been educated on. And so even as we closed out last week, the sisters who came up, they really blessed me because each person had a different interpretation. And I love that because our education journey is personal. And it's going to be what's for us. And it goes back into our title, which says living within your means. And I shared last week that each of our means are different. And we are in different places, and we have different things. And so as I was studying this week, God had me go back to the beginning of this series. And as I went back, I recognized that I was the one who started off this series book. And we were dealing with stewardship, and we have been each session up until session 7. And so I started off in stewardship, and now we're here in session 7, and we're talking about living within your means. And I come to you this morning not because I'm perfect, Not because I've always made the best decisions, but I come to you because this is a place that God brought me to. And as I was studying this lesson, this is a place I can say that I have grown in tremendously in my life and in my walk, is really to live and use my resources the way that God desires for me to use my resources. And in that, I've been blessed. Statistics might put me in a category as being a single mom, as a person who's impoverished, or as a person who lacks, or a person who can't meet my means or my priorities. But God is faithful, and He's so just, and He has allowed me, because of His discipline, to really live within my means. I'm not trying to keep up with the Joneses. I'm not trying to have the latest of the latest. And it's not all the time because I can't have those things. Some of the time it's because I choose to do the things that God desires for me to do with my resources. All right, so as we go in, we're going to deal with the areas that we already know. And so we know these things, and now we have to apply the things that we know. So I began to think about cultivating the ground because our series and our book starts the same way. We cultivate the ground, and we plant the seed, and then we get resources for our seed, and we nurture our seed. And then we get the fruit from the seed, and then harvest time, and digging deeper. And so we go through these each week and each session, but then it's like, do we understand what it means? Do we understand what it is that He's, what it is that we're reading and what it is that we're saying? So I looked up cultivating, and it really blessed me because last night Pastor Laurent really dealt with cultivating the ground, and he talked about burning up the field and the purpose of burning up that field. And so I looked up the word cultivate just through my study this week, and as a form of confirmation from last night, it says to prepare and use for crops or gardening. And so what we cultivate when we come into this Christian education hour, and when we come into the kingdom, we have to cultivate our hearts, we have to cultivate our minds, because that's where the seeds are falling. They're falling in our hearts, they're falling in our minds. But if we have not tilled our ground, if we have not burned our fields, we're not going to receive what's new. We're not going to receive what God has. We're not going to experience our harvest. And so in that, I wanted to just bring that definition because cultivating the ground really gave us an opportunity last week to self-reflect. And so I gave 2 questions that came out of the series last week. And question 1 was, do you have a family budget that you follow? If not, why? Second question was, what is it that keeps you from living with a planned budget? And so I said we're going to come back this week and we were going to answer those questions. And so I would love to give 2 individuals an opportunity to give us a 1-minute answer to what that is. And what I desire on today is just a little bit of participation, whether you're on Facebook or whether you're here in the temple, just to answer those questions. Reflection is what gets us to a place of better. Reflection is what gets us to a place of growth. We are the ones handling our finances. We are the ones who are in this place. We are the ones who are responsible to manage the budget that God has given us. And so we're going to start with question 1. Do you have a family budget that you follow? If not, why?
I believe I don't follow a budget properly, and the reason I don't is because of consistency, lack of consistency. I see the benefit of it. You're already a testimony of how it works. And so that's something I need to work at.
Thank you so much for sharing. Can I get one more individual who would like to share? Do you follow a family budget? If not, why?
Well, I have to confess, we don't. Because finances in our marriage was a problem. And just even trying to manage that, because there was like feelings of control issues. And so to relinquish that, I just kind of set up a budget for the things that I need to take care of for the house. And I do follow that. You know, I pay all the majority of the bills and all of that stuff. And I have to budget that in order to meet all the requirements. But as a family, it's just like we early on in our marriage, that was a big problem when we was doing joint finances and whatnot, because communication was an issue. So, and that's one of the things you talked about last week, about communicating to your people your budget and having them to understand and buy into it. And honestly, sometimes I find that to be a problem.
I got it. Thank you so much for sharing. All right, so it just shows that it's something, some budget, even from the Cultivating the Ground, it takes work, right? Sister Butler's answer, I love it. It's the consistency. We have to remain consistent in that. I shared last week that my word is no. And I'm very strong on that no. Not even just within my household or my family, it's whoever's trying to come inside my budget. You're going to be able to get a no if that's, you know, what God is allowing for me to give at that time. And so second question is, what is it that keeps you from living with a planned budget? I think Brother Cliff answered that for his house. Is some issues from the past and really just, you know, getting over that to, you know, restart and establish something different. Anyone else want to answer that question? What is it that keeps you from living with a planned budget?
For me, one of the things is we got a planned budget, the discipline. I'm not a big spender, but when I do spend, I spend. And just sometimes looking at the numbers, 'cause I'm the type of person, one time, I still got I call it my brother, we work with, he calls his bank account every day, check it sometimes twice a day. And one time I was like that because we work on what we get paid on productivity. One week our paycheck could be $400, next week could be $800, the next 2 weeks could be $1,600 each. So it fluctuates. Sometimes when you look at the number, you have a projected goal that you're gonna make 16, 16, 16, or 1,000 or 4,000 bring home for the month. It don't work out.
Yeah.
So it causes stress. And it's a very competitive field. So what it make you do is grit, grind, tell people no, you figure it out on your own, because I got my own business, because I'm making money. And sometimes looking at the numbers, looking at that budget, also it causes issues with your, like the brother was saying, with your family, because you're like, hey, look at this here, baby. This is what we got. And sometimes you go, well, okay, the woman may be right, she's got her point of view and this and that. Let's just roll with it. And it takes some real discipline and to be able to deal with it. And then time consuming. How often do we take time and really look at our numbers and reevaluate them and this and that? Now, my buddy, he still do it. I'm like, yeah, I call that thing once every 3 weeks. We got a joint account, all the bills come out, and all we know is that amount of dollars in there. And now with this auto pay, it's just on cruise control. Yeah. So time consuming and the discipline of your of going to look at it.
Thank you so much for sharing. Those are really great things. I will say, I am the person who checks my account every day. Yeah. I wake up as part of my vitamins and all the things you do in the morning, face wash, brush your teeth, checking my account falls on that list. And I do it every day. Amen. So, and one of the reasons why is because cyberspace has become so big, right? And I don't know, I think somebody might want to become me. And hack into my stuff. And so I want to make sure the money I want to sleep with is the same money I wake up to. And so I check it. All right, Brother Cliff?
I just want to share one thing. Like just a week or so ago, somebody opened a checking account in my name at Wells Fargo. And they sent me like the stuff, and then like I saw the text and it was like saying the progress in your account. I'm like, I didn't apply for no account. And then they sent me another one and said that they had changed the personal information. I went, hold up. So I called them and I shut that down. Yeah. But like you, I do online banking, Brother Derek. I ain't calling nobody. But I may check my online bank account like 12 times a day because I have caught instances where, like you're saying, somebody's like trying to get your money, especially during this COVID thing. You know, there's people that made a whole living off of hacking into people's bank accounts during the COVID era. you know, and so I just gotta be on top of that, cause
Yeah.
them little pennies I got gotta cover the basics.
Yeah.
Yes,
You know?
they help us stay within our means, right?
Yeah.
So I was praying this week and just really asking God, like, which way you wanted me to go with living within our means. And even I had to ask, what makes me land on this lesson? And so I kind of went deep with it because he took me back and I started off with stewardship. And here we are on week 7, session 7, and it's talking about living within your means. And he began to reflect upon my timeline of me working with my finances and allowing him into my space and then living with biblical principles. I am a person who desires to live with biblical principles. It's in my heart, it's what I do, it's what I teach, it's what I share. And so he began to show me that, and it really was encouraging to me to hear from my daddy that that's why, you know, that I'm here. And so it's not because Sister Portia's perfect, but I will say I had 2 sisters reach out to me last week and they was like, I want you to help me. I want you to help me with my budget and I want to be able to do that. And the only thing that they had that they needed to do is they need to say no. It's not that they don't have it. It's not that they can't. They just need to tell people no. No, you can't have my budget. No, you can't have my money because this is for my means and this is for me, right? And so definitely willing to help anybody who desires to line up or, you know, get that budget, create that budget, live with that budget. I'm definitely an accountability partner, so I can help you in that. As I was praying, he showed me that we are some educated people here in House of Prayer. And we've been talking about our money and our stewardship, and not just even in our money. He started off talking about our talents in the beginning of this session. He talked about our time. He talked about our treasure. And so here we are now. We spent a couple sessions just talking about our resources. And first thing he wanted us to do is become debt free. And so that was the thing that really, you know, pricked me and got me, you know, to thinking when we were talking about that lesson. And then what was credit and how do we use those things? And it's really interesting that God cares enough about us for these things. And he wants to educate us according to his word on how to live for that. And so we're going to go into the C, which is Luke 14:28. And this is a parable which really can go read. It goes from Luke chapter 14:28 through 35. But the seed that they pulled out of that was, suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Will he not first sit down and estimate the cost to see if he has enough money to complete it? And so it came in a form of a question, like, who's going to build a house and never even see if you have the money? You know, who's going to even go out to dinner and not see if you have the money? Who's going to go for ice cream and not see? So we are conscious of finances and understand that we need them, but do we look at them as the whole scope of living within our means? And how does that work, you know, for us? We have some wealthy people in our congregation who are budgeting finances, who have, you know, started from the bottom, now they up, you know, and they have that. We have people who are professional, you know, in educating you on finances. And so those people are some people, if you didn't want to connect with Sister Portia, Sister Tracy is one of those individuals. Brother Zeb is another one of those individuals. And so just connecting with them. The Williams, they talked 2 months in a row on finances and how they were able to get to the place that they are and give and also maintain and help adult children and, you know, so on, to do the things that they want to do. So those are people to connect with, to be educated and to learn, you know, those life applications. Another thing that I looked for when I was looking is like, what is means, right? And so this kind of took me back to the thing, and this is Sister Portia's belief, is everybody decides, we talk about the alcohol to me, and it's like, what's means? What does means mean? What's living in your means? And who determines your means, right?
Yeah.
So I always chuckle because I feel like with the whole alcohol, we drink but not get drunk. It's like, who determines if you're drunk? You do. So just don't drink, because you don't know if you're drunk or not, and you ain't gonna probably admit that you are drunk. And so then I thought about who determines our means. Well, most of the time we determine our means. But how are we determining our means? Are we determining our means by our wants, our desires, our selfish things? Or are we determining our means by what God desires for that? And so if we just look at the first principle that God's given us, it's the tithe, right? And so our means would be 10% is His, 90% is ours. So if you can't live within 90%, you're probably above your means. And so that's just a biblical foundation that we can stand on, and it's from the Bible. So you have 90% of your resources, and if you can't live within them, you're probably above your means. Same thing I shared last week about the whole payday loans and all of that. I should have made a better decision on how to figure out childcare. I didn't think it was wrong, or I didn't see the error in it at that time, because all I knew is I had a problem, which is the lack of child care and the lack of resources to pay for the child care, and so I was trying to get child care paid for. But it was digging me down in a hole that I wasn't never supposed to go through. I could have asked different people. I could have asked my employer. I never opened up my mouth, honestly, to ask outside of my home. I went inside my own mind and my own process, and I did what I wanted to do. And so determining what's in our means is really yielding those things to God and trusting Him with those. And so our means is our money and our financial resources. And so we want to yield those things to Him, and we want to talk about that. So we're going to go into planting the seed today. And these I love. They are some good tools and principles to live by. And we're going to, talk about how He wants us to live within our means. So planting the seed. We talked about cultivating the ground. We're not going to be able to get to a place of living within our means if we don't cultivate our ground, meaning cultivate our hearts to receive and hear what God has for us individually, and open up our minds to a new way, right? Our way is sometimes the easy way. Sometimes living without the budget is easy, because guess what? I don't have to be disciplined. I don't have to do the work. I don't have to have consistency. I don't have to communicate. Oh, yeah, I'll stay on this side. I mean, we okay. We eat every day in my car. I got gas, and I got all this. But I looked up, and our inflation rate is 7.8% at this moment, and it's going to continue to increase, right? So even for Sister Portia, what I have to do is January, so January, I kind of stayed within my same budget. February, I had to reevaluate my budget. Yeah. I had to move my money around because groceries was not right for me. So I budget $60 a week for groceries. It's just me and DeMarcus, and I cook and he cook. So $60 a week is what I budget for groceries, recognizing that 60 wasn't getting us nothing. No. Yeah. Because groceries have went up. So now I had to reevaluate. So guess what I started doing? Driving less. So I took some gas budget, moved it to grocery budget, because we gotta eat and live, but now we just won't be going no place. And so I had to move some money around and stay within my budget. 7.8% inflation when your check is not going up can kill your budget. Yes. And so I have to be very mindful of those things. So not only is gas is going up as well, but I just chose like, hey, I'm not gonna buy it because we're gonna stay at home. And when we stay at home, we keep my mileage down on my car, which is gonna give me a longer life on that. So then it's gonna last me longer. And so really working within my means and working within my budget. So I'm a person who does not like to ask people for things. That's just who I am. But if you want my car to move, you're gonna have to fuel it. Because I moved that budget money somewhere else. And it was to my grocery bill because we weren't getting anything for that $60. It wasn't working out. So going into planting the seed. Planting the seed, which of these rules might you follow to live within your financial means and achieve your end goal of personal stewardship? So this list that I'm going to read, it might not be all of these will be for you, but it's asking you which ones will you follow to make sure you live within your means, within your financial needs of your personal stewardship. And so I talk about it, and I want to reiterate this. Our means and our personal stewardship is going to be different because our family dynamics are different. It's just me and one other dependent. So I have one crumb snatcher. Some other people have multiple crumb snatchers. And so it's going to look different within our means. I have things like we talked about last week that are priority to me, where your household may have a different priority. Tennis shoes is not a priority to me. And if y'all feel bad for my son, he takes blessings. But I'm not spending $220 on their pair of tennis shoes. It's not in my means. It's not a priority. His dentistry, his life insurance, his health insurance, every now and then a $25 haircut will become a priority for me. The other thing, he needs a job. And when he had a job, it wasn't a priority for him either. Because he had a lot of 220s and he did not spend on tennis shoes. So, I'm not going to do that, right? But some people, the tennis shoes is your priority.
Yeah.
Now you might want to ask why it's your priority and should it be a part of your means, you know? Another thing that is for my home, and I only can speak for me because I just know me, right? And so you know where you are and you know what you do. Personal grooming, cosmetic maintenance is something I love. I love to have my hair done, and I love to have my nails and my feet done. Well, it came a time that wasn't a priority for, it was a priority for me for a season, and have them done. And then it became a time where that wasn't a priority for me because I moved into a place where investing became a priority for me. And so I'm transitioning back into a place where it can become a priority, but I sacrificed that for 2 years to move to a different place where I wanted to be. And so those are things we have to decide, what's our priority. And so on this list, everything might not be for you, or everything might be for you, but what is it for your personal self? So first one is to honor God with your tithes. Is that a priority for you? And it's self-reflection. So this is what we're dealing with today, is just self-reflection. We're going to deal with it for the next week because he shared with me during prayer. We're already educated. So we know what to do. What we're working on now is that life application part. Yes. So last week we talked about prayer, life circumstance, education, application. So application is where he's saying we need to get to as people. As a church, as a congregation. Pastor Laurent said something last night so powerful to me. We can't do what we did in 2648. Yeah. So if you're still doing what you was doing in 2648 with your finances, now that we at 2940, it might be time to do something different, right? And so that blessed me so much. So is honoring God something that you desire to do, you know, with your tithe? Are you able to set aside 10% for savings? Or do you have a savings plan? Right? So 10% right here is a base point. If you balling and you have extra that you can do 20% or 25%, then do that. Remember, you got 90% already. You have 90% that belongs to you. If that's what your priority is, because in order to have the 90, you had to agree to step 1, which is to honor God with your tithe. Or you might just keep your 100. So you had to decide what's your priority. So setting aside the 10% for savings. It was a season in my life I oversaved because I didn't want to be broke. But then it's like my means was catching up, and I'm like, and then somebody said, you're oversaving. Somebody actually had to tell me you're oversaving. And I was saving more than, because I needed that money for something else. Because for me, saving means it goes in there and you don't touch it. You touch it when it's an emergency. Or you touch it when, you know, the goal of what you're saving it for has arrived. You've arrived to that place. And so for my son, I set him up an account, and I told him, I said, if every dollar you put in your savings account, I will match that dollar for dollar. Every single dollar you put in there. And he's had a couple jobs, and he saved a little, and what he understands, because I teach him the same principle. If it goes in our savings, we don't touch it. So he's very careful with what he put in his savings, because he knows once it goes over into that bucket, it's there to stay. And so, but the money was going to be to get him a car. So we started this at 12. And I'm a single mom who has a budget, desires to live within that budget. So I knew at 12 I needed to start preparing him for now we at 16. And so I wanted him to have that years to save up and to have what he wanted. We're now at the season where it's car time. He don't have car money. And he's not very happy. And he's not going to drive my car. And he thinks that the license means you can. So he's going to be very sad. that. But his option is still available until 18. So we started at 12, and I let him know that option is on the table until he's 18. I think he's getting a realization now I'm going to see that money hit. You know, that savings account to match him dollar for dollar. But planning for that, saving for that. I knew I wasn't going to be in a place financially looking at my means and where God was showing me what to do for ministry, what he was showing me to do for household, to just purchase DeMarcus a car and pull up at his birthday party with a red bow. But I was able to match him wherever he was, and he hasn't decided that he's ready for that yet. But whenever it comes, I'll be there for him. All right, so then it says live off 75 to 80% of your income. Is that a priority for you? Are you willing or able to do that? Don't try to live up to someone else's standard of success. I think this is one of the major ones for me that I had to recognize and then also teach in my home, right? So you can see somebody in a Jag. That means they have way more money than me. Because even maintenance on a Jag is expensive. Maintenance on this Buick Envision is expensive for me. And so learning to live with that and then learning what people want. And so really releasing that, even for me to receive that personally and also extending that beyond, right? So for me, I can't assume everybody wants a budget and everybody wants to be disciplined. And then I can't judge them because they don't, right? Or measuring that for that. Everybody's desire is not to buy a house. Everybody's desire is not to own a business. Everybody's desire is not going to be the same. And so those levels of success is like they talked about in Cultivating the Ground, keeping up with the Joneses, it's not going to be the same for everybody. But then you're going to have individuals who are want to own a business, want to be entrepreneurs, want to do those things. And so learning not to measure up to what we see as successful for others. Because what their means is what their means is. A 2 household income is where it's at, right? So when you see those couples doing those things, I can't look at them like, oh, I'm gonna do just like the Jameses. Yeah, I'm gonna have 5 cars, and they got 5 car insurances. I don't want to pay 1 car insurance. So maybe I don't want to do that, you know? I heard Sister Tina say something that blessed me. She loves to work. I don't. So I don't need 5 cars. Because I'm just stay with this one, because I don't love that. It's not a love for me. So learning not to live up to someone else's standard of success, all right? So somebody is successful because they graduated from college. Some people are successful because they got a promotion. Some people feel like they're successful because they bought a home. Be successful in what God called you to do and how he does it. I'll be honest, for me, I'm successful because my son has been able to live with lights and utilities his whole 16 years of life. He's ate every single day, and we are not bothered for anything. Right. That makes me feel success. Yeah. Because I've done what I'm supposed to do. And even if he got out, and I tell people this every time, and he lives with every ounce of regret, I could look him in his face and say, your mama did her best. And I can say it with pride, and I can say it with success, because that's what success looks like for me, right? And so it's going to look different for each person. All right? So don't buy anything on credit that you cannot pay for out of that 75 to 80% that you allow yourself to have. Develop both long-term and short-term financial goals. That should be something. So right now, we're about to go into a season where he's going to want a car. He got his little license, he got his little document, so he thinks he's supposed to roll. So it's going to be a short-term goal for us on how we're going to get there. Mama's not going to buy it, but she's definitely going to help him with that. A longer financial goal is to come off my job. I don't want to work. So that's my long-term financial goal. I want to own something. I want to own my time. I want to be where I want to be. Yeah. Sister Stephanie, you had your hand up?
No, I was just agreeing with you. I'm trying to retire before about 6.
Okay. Yeah, so that's, so you want to set those goals. We talked last week of just coming out of that debt. Have we set goals to come out of debt? To not be in that place, and it's not an overnight thing, but have you set the goals on how to, achieve that? All right, and so then it says, when one bill is paid off, set the money aside as a fund to pay cash for or make a sizable down payment on the next big purchase. That's where I live. I don't like that. I don't want nobody. I don't want you calling me. I don't want none of that, right? And so setting that money aside. Dave Ramsey talks about the snowball effect. We have Primerica, they talk about the stack effect. It's like things that you can do to do that money. And when you save money to do that, and that's how I was able to do my car, it does help expedite that process, right? And so it's been seasons where Sister Portia did not have a car. Y'all saw me. You know, y'all probably gave me a ride. Thank you. You know, but in that season, I was in the process of saving. I wasn't ashamed. I would call in a heartbeat. I tried my best to be ready. If I wasn't, please forgive me. But I was grateful for that time where people was helping me to get to the place I wanted to be. I could have went down and occurred it. I could have done it, but I wasn't. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to bust my budget. I made it in my mind in 2007 I was going to live with a budget, and I've been doing it ever since. And so in that process and in that thought, I was committed to doing the work. I was committed to communicating. DeMarcus probably, he doesn't like this topic. So if y'all see, he'll be sad, but he doesn't like talking about the finances because he wants what he wants and he's young and he's selfish. So, but we have to do it, and I had to communicate to him, this is what Mama got, and this is what Mama could do. And it's what it is. We can't be like everybody else because it's not our means. So using these helpful rules cited, look at your current budget and see if there are ways to make more efficient. If there are ways you can make more efficient. Have you identified any waste in your budget? All right, so as we close, I got a couple minutes. This is going to be our reflection for next week. Looking at your money and see where you're wasting money. One area I was wasting money for me at the time was personal cosmetics. Hair, nails, pedicures, they're expensive. I love them though. It was my time. I had a season where I was able to do that, but I wanted to go into investments. And when I chose that that's what I wanted to do, I had to give up those things for a season to get to the place where I can go back, you know, to that place. Also, another place we were wasting money was eating out. A lot of money eating out. We had a Sunday school lesson where they had us go look at our finances. And I went back and looked at that mobile app. And oh my goodness, hurtful, hurt me so bad. And doing it so often because it's there that you don't see it, right? And so when we reflect on that, so reflect on your budget, look at these principles for next week and see areas of where you might have been wasting. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna come back and share, because one thing I recognize in House of Prayer is we're educated, God showed that to me, but also we overcome by the word of our testimony. You know, so I stood up here last week and I felt some kind of shame about it, but I recognize that my transparency is going to help somebody else. And your transparency helps me too. I'm a person who does not have to learn by experiencing it. If you tell me not to do it, then I don't have to do it. I watched my mom gamble. I will never do it. I want my money. And I don't want to try to see if I can flip it or change it or no. I just know I got it and I'm gonna keep it. I learned from the experience. Have not stepped on a casino. I'm just that person. You don't have to tell me not to do crack cocaine. If you told me it killed you and ruined your life, I'm going to choose that I'm not going to do that. And so I hope that my testimony helps you, your testimony helps me. And so next week we're going to come back and we're going to share areas where we might see waste, how we can help each other, because we want to begin to apply these principles to be what God's called us to be. All right? Any questions? I got 1 minute. Any questions? If you want to pick my brain, I'm not well versed, I'm not a professional, but I have been living it. And that's what God had to remind me of this week. It's why he had me standing here, is because I really have. I have had a budget and I've lived within that budget. No questions? We're going to get ready to close out. Next week's assignment is to reflect on your budget, see where you can apply the principles from planting the seed, and where did you identify areas of waste in your budget.